and welcome back to the returning African podcast, or as we name it now, the Mama Africa podcast. I'm your host, HOD of the PSP. Like, share and comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these future episodes of this African special podcast and the main one that is posted here on YouTube and on Spotify as well. Follow us on social media and of course listen to the main one on Spotify, Google Podcast or any other platform. Tomorrow new episode dropping, actually two maybe episodes dropping. One will be for the recap of the European football and one will be for the preview of the Champions League football. Join us for more and you're welcome. So as we mentioned, it was the return of the CAF Champions League over the weekend on Thursday, or on Friday actually, and Saturday in a new season, apparently the last season before the Super League starts, and it will be incepted next season. We'll breeze past the Group A, really. One match took place from Group A. It was Mamelodi Sundowns playing against Al-Hilal Durman. The game was in South Africa. And I mentioned it in the preview, the short preview on Friday's episode, that it wasn't really. I don't think that Mamelodi Sundowns will find a real trouble against Al-Hilal. I don't think Al-Hilal in general will do a lot of damage in their group, albeit they played moderately well, I would say, in that game. They had, opportunities, particularly I would say in the second half. They had more opportunities to score and to equalise, of course, after Mamelodi Sundowns took the lead early on in the 8th minute thanks to Temba Zwane. A victory that I would say already puts Al-Hilal in problems because, they don't really, I really believe that, Al-Merrikh have better chances of getting through that group, and, it will be hard for them even, double that, because they're going to host Al-Ahli in the second game, supposedly, next week, of course. They will be taking on Al-Ahli, the champions, of course, coming back from the FIFA Club World Cup, third place, of course, by the way, congratulations to them. But overall, Mamelodi Sundowns, I think, deserved really to get through Al-Hilal. I think they attacked really well in the first half. Yes, the second half was all about Al-Hilal trying and getting some golden opportunities and missing some sitters, really. If you watch the highlights, you will understand. If they missed some serious sitters to equalise, they could have gotten with a point, but they couldn't. And they lost the first game for them. Of course, the second game of this group from the first round is Al-Ahli versus Al-Merrikh, and it will be played on the 5th of March. Of course, as you mentioned again, congratulations to them for their third place win in the FIFA Club World Cup. To Group B now, and the North African or the Arab teams in that group had a much better luck than in the first group. Raja Casablanca, of course, hosted Amazulu. That was yesterday, of course, night in Morocco, and they managed to get the victory 1-0. It took them quite a while to get the victory, of course. The goal came only in the 67th minute thanks to Mohsin Moutwalli, but of course they dominated the game. We can't really stress this enough. I mean, the differences and the gap in the difference between them and their South African opponent is pretty huge, although credit for that South African side, Amazulu, for being tight, I think, for most of the game, really showing what they can be defensively. I mean, we didn't see a lot of them offensively, didn't do much in the attack. They never had any shot on target. They never even came close, I think, to scoring. A much deserved, I think, dominant victory for Raja Casablanca, a side that is, of course, returning to the Champions League after being featured in the Confederations Cup for the last couple of years. And they definitely got off to a good start. It was a hard start, yes, but I think it was a good start, obviously, as far as Raja Casablanca are concerned. The other North African side in that group also had a great start and a big away win. That is for US Setif from Algeria, defeating Horo Conakry away from home 1-0. And Horo Conakry are really a tough side to be in Africa, particularly away from home in Guinea. They definitely were more defensive in the first half. The home side tried to take advantage. They really put a lot of pressure on AS Setif, of course, with the Tunisian coach Nabil Kouki, who's doing a tremendous job on that front as well. So it will be really brilliant to see how he's going to progress in this group. Maybe he'll qualify alongside Raja Casablanca, of course, but any surprises that could happen in the next 5 weeks of the Champions League. Horoy, of course, got a man sent off, in the 68th minute. By that time, they were already losing 1-0, thanks to Ahmed Kendusi's goal for Setif. I think a stupid goal, that's what I would name, because the goalkeeper, I think, didn't need to go out to try and attack Ahmed Kendusi. Of course, Horoya's goalkeeper, Musa Kamara, didn't need to go out and attack Ahmed Kendusi, but he did. He lost the ball, and Kendusi ended up rounding him and scoring from a pretty tight and pretty hard angle to score from, so credit to him for doing that. So it's a big win for AS Setif, who at the moment, of course, are pretty close to the top of the Algerian league as well. They're doing well in the Algerian league. They're in a pretty good position at the moment. They are fifth on the table. Yes, they're pretty far from the top of the table of the Algerian league. Going to talk about them just in a moment, but they're doing really well. It's a good start for them in the Champions League, and again, for my Tunisian patriot Nabil Kouki, I think all the luck in the world for him in his experience and for his run so far with Setif. That has been really, really good, I think, with that side. He got, I think, to the quarterfinal of the Confederations Cup last time out, but he couldn't continue. Hopefully for him, it will be better in the Champions League. As we mentioned, of course, Raja Casablanca defeated Amazulu, which make the standing for this group. Setif and Raja Casablanca, of course, sharing the top spot. Setif, because of it's an away win, they get the honours ahead of Raja Casablanca, Amazulu, and Horoya Conakry with 0 points at the bottom, of course. On to Group C now, which I think is going to be the most important group throughout this podcast, of course, as long as it will last throughout the season. And it is, of course, Group C, where there is 2 Tunisian teams drawn together. And it kicked off on Friday with Etoile Sportif du Sahel hosting CR Belouizdad, hosting top of the Algerian league. Etoile Sportif du Sahel haven't been impressive at all in the domestic campaign in Tunisia. They've been struggling to find form. They've been really embroiled in all loads of problems, financial problems, stadium revamping that has been undergoing, I think, for an eternity at the moment. We still don't know how or when the stadium is going to be ready. There's all sorts of problems, player leaving, players coming. Roger Le Maire returned, of course, after sacking the former coach, and of course it proven that the Tunisian football, as far as coaches, is not the most stable of cultures. But I think overall, this was not a great game on both aspects, I think, for Etoile Sportif du Sahel. Not the result, and not the performance, certainly. The first half was pretty pedestrian, I would say. I think the pitch quality or the state of the pitch didn't really help, although the second game was a pretty detriment to that. But obviously the difference, I think, in the second game, that Esperance was playing a much weaker side than Belouizdad. This one was pretty tough. It was pretty condensed, I would say. No real flow to it in the first half. In particular, the game was mostly played in the midfield. Lots of physicality, lots of duels, lots of aerial balls, lots of crosses being played. There was no real rhythm. Etoile Sportif du Sahel, the hosts, being the host in front of like 20,000 fans in the stadium, which was good to see, by the way. It's been a while, but they never had any shot on target. Belouizdad, I think, accepted it. They knew they would be the ones sitting behind in the first half. They accepted it, but in the second half, of course, they got going, they got on the front foot, and they pressed really better. They had a 10-minute or 15-minute stretch in the second half where they were like completely dominating, and they were winning all of the second balls and all of the duels, aerial or on the ground. It certainly was them. And again, as I mentioned, they're a side that are top of the table in their league, so they're heading into this game with pretty good form, and they definitely showed up for it. But obviously we have to talk about the penalty. The late incident, of course, in the 90 minutes mark, Belouizdad get a penalty, and that was that. It was pretty much panic and heart attacks in Tunisia, because everybody thought, you know what, that's the penalty that they're going to get. This is going to be the outdoing, I think, of the undoing, I would say, of Etoile Sportif du Sahel. But the penalty was saved by Ayman Matlouthi for Kherdin Merzougi. It was an easy penalty, frankly. It was a pretty training-based penalty. There's no real, no momentum behind it. It wasn't even strong, I would say. It was a training penalty, but still, the goalkeeper has to save it anyway, regardless. And he saved a point for, I saved a point, but in general, maybe you can say that they dropped 2, although I would argue that for Wydad, it's definitely 2 points missed and dropped there because they got a golden opportunity at the end to just win the game and start on a good note. At the other side, of course, in this group, Esperance started on a great note by beating Jwaneng Galaxy from Botswana 4-0. This wasn't even close. This wasn't even a contest, obviously, to begin with. But 30 minutes in, or 33 minutes in, Esperance were winning 3-0. Ben Ramadan scored a hat-trick. It's a good start for him. He continues to perform greatly in the Champions League with Esperance. Of course, it was a chance for the coach to test the new recruits in the back, in the middle, and obviously in the attack as well. And it was a pretty good experience, I would say, for some players. Rotation is necessary. The games are coming thick and fast. The second game is not that far, and it is a tough one for Esperance because they're going to Algeria to face Belouizdad. That's going to be next Saturday. So it will be pretty tough for Esperance to play that game. Obviously, this game was easy against a side that is just debuting in the Champions League. Founded in 2014, no real experience in Africa in any way, so you can expect Esperance to really dominate them and take one over them. Again, I was impressed by the midfield. I was impressed by the new recruits in attack. The defensive additions. I think Henny Amamo coming from Club Sportif Sfaxien. I don't really believe that it's a game where he could be really, really tested. But I think going out with a clean sheet in your first game is really good for your confidence, whatever the competition and whatever the opponent is. Going with a clean sheet in any game is a pretty good omen, a pretty good start, I think, for your career. It's a good performance, good display. 4-0. They top the group, obviously. And the next game is going to be against Belouizdad in Algeria. It's going to be a tough one, and Esperance need to prepare for it as good as they can be, because it will be a pretty tricky trip to Algeria next week. I mean, the good thing about this group probably for them is they're not going to be making too much of travel. They're only going to be making one big move, I think, to Botswana, and they play 5 games in Tunisia, which is really they play 4 games, in Tunisia, which is a plus, I think, for them, as well as Etoile, Sportif du Sahel, of course, which I wish they both qualify together from that group anyway. So the second game for this group will be, of course, Esperance moving on to face Belouizdad, while Etoile will make the hard trip to Botswana to face Jwaneng Galaxy. Esperance 3 points, Belouizdad and Etoile 1 point, while Galaxy FC are 0 points at the bottom of the table. And we finish off, of course, the first episode and talking about the first round by Group D. Of course, Wydad Casablanca faced Sagrada Esperance. That was on Friday, and they didn't find a lot of difficulty, of course, beating that side. Of course, they defeated them 3-0. Guim Benza, formerly playing in the Tunisian league, of course, put on a great performance as well, capping it off with a goal for him. In the third goal for Wydad Casablanca was from him, of course. It was an easy game for Wydad Casablanca. Clearly could have been more than just 3 goals. They missed loads of opportunities, but obviously it's a good start for them. For Wydad Casablanca, they're doing really well. They're proving again that they're one of the strongest side and the silkiest side in African football, one of the smoothest in attack in that regard. Of course, top of their league in Morocco, 6 points ahead of the closest rival, which is, of course, Raja Casablanca. It definitely will give them a good boost, I think, for a start, particularly the second game in this group. It's going to be very, very interesting. Of course, Wydad Casablanca actually go away to Atletico Petroleus, and that's where we're going to transition to the second game between Petro Atletico and Zamalek, who travelled, or Petro Atletico travelled to Egypt to face Zamalek, and against, I think, all odds, they managed to get a draw that could have been a win for them. Now, if you look at the stats of the game, or the highlights of the game, or you watch the full game even, you won't even think that Petro Atletico deserved anything from the game, aside from losing probably 3 or 4-0. But they didn't. I mean, when you make mistakes, you concede goals. It is simple. Petro Atletico accepted the fact that Zamalek would be better than them, will be pressing them. They're playing away from home, and they sat back and defended really, really well for the first half an hour. I mean, there was a bit of luck in that regard. I mean, Zamalek missed a couple of good opportunities, hitting the post once. The goalkeeper saved a couple of opportunities for Zamalek, but definitely the mistakes that Zamalek made cost them, and they conceded twice in the first half. They ended, of course, losing in that first half 2-0, but then of course Zamalek, in the second half basically were playing alone, and it was about, the question was when they're going to be scoring. They scored in the 57th minute to half the deficit thanks to Yusuf Obama, but of course they were waiting, and they tried, and the opportunities came about from almost every attacker from Zamalek. They tried to score, and they managed only to score in the 95th minute when an assist from the returning from the Egyptian side, of course, the left back Ahmed Fatou, supplied Mahmoud Hamdi for the second goal of Zamalek, salvaging a point at the death for the Egyptian giant, of course, the second biggest side in Egyptian football, and frankly in African football as well. They have 5 Champions Leagues to their name, so it will be pretty interesting to see how Zamalek perform. They haven't been that great last year. Of course, they went out of the group stages. They will try and go 1 better, even 2 or 3 better this season. They will try and improve their results as good as they can. But obviously, it's a disappointing one, I think, for Petro Atletico, who could have just hung on for moments there. I mean, it was 4 minutes and they scored in the 95th. You don't need any more evidence, I think, that this game was pretty crazy as far as Zamalek is concerned. But Petro Atletico will take the point, I would say, and obviously they're hosting at Wydad Casablanca in the second game, while Zamalek, of course, will make the trip to Angola as well to play Sagrada Esperance. So hopefully for them this will be much easier game, and they will get those 3 points out of that. The second round, of course, of the Champions League kicks off next week. It will be Al-Hilal Omdurman versus Al-Ahli in the Group A, Al-Marikh versus Mamelodi Sundowns in Group A as well. In Group B, Amazulu host Horoya, while Setif play against Raja Casablanca in a pure Arab North African derby. In Group C, another one between Belouizdad and Esperance de Tunis, and Galaxy will host Etoile Sportive de Sahel. And in Group D, as you mentioned, it's Atletico Petroleum de Luanda versus Wydad Casablanca, while Sagrada host Zamalek. This round takes place next Saturday and Sunday. That's it for the first episode of the Mama Africa podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like, share, comment, and mostly subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes, of course, and the main podcast episodes. Hopefully a new one dropping tomorrow. Eyes with HOD of the BSP. Follow us on social media. Listen everywhere. Share, spread the word around. Eyes HOD of the BSP. One more time. Take care and goodbye.
Closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.